Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are using the Line Succulent stamps and dies, as well as the Frond stencil, and then I'm going to use a sentiment from the Perfect Day set that just came out. It's a wedding set. So one of the cards is going to be a little bit more clean and layered. One of them is going to be a bit more clean and simple. I will be honest and tell you that I'm a little particular about my clean and layered. I don't really like a lot of busy going on. And so when I was doing my stenciling, I chose to go about halfway down the card with my ink blending, so that I would still have some open blank space. So I chose some greens. I'm using Twisted Citron, Mowed Lawn, and pine needles. And I just thought the palm frond would be a really good fit for the idea of these kind of vines growing down, to just add some more color and make it a little bit more interesting. This is my base layer, so I'm keeping it pretty light, and then I will add a heavier application of ink once I put my stencil down. I do like to blend out my distress inks 2 times, so I start with my lightest color, go out to my darkest, and then from my darkest back into my lightest. Sometimes I just use the leftover ink on my foam pad to blend it out, and sometimes I do pick up more color. It just depends on what my card needs. Here, I'm going to go ahead and lay the stencil down. I will tell you, in case you don't watch my videos, that I have repositional adhesive on the back of this. So that's why I don't have to use anything to hold it down and it's staying in place. I do this with pretty much all my stencils, and I use Tombow Mono Multi-Glue to get that done. So with that in place, I'm just going to continue to add the same color inks in the same order in order to get my stencil down there, and the tone on tone will be a lot more subtle. For the concept, I guess, of this video is a good way to put it. You may have seen the title, vertical versus horizontal. I think a lot of times when we see a stamp set, we see it just one way, and we don't take the time to kind of play around with it and see what else we can do with it. And so that's why I wanted to do this particular one. It's very obvious when you look at this, especially the way that they are positioned in the packaging, that they are a horizontal stamp. But don't pigeonhole yourself. They don't have to be a horizontal stamp. They can be a vertical stamp. And so because it has the vine feature, that is how I chose to just kind of turn them on their side and get a completely different look for them. Would encourage you to do this with different stamps that you have, to see how you can get more uses out of them. With that said, I will tell you that I do like the horizontal card better, but that's simply because it is the clean and simple one and there's lots of white space. We're going to be talking about a little bit about design, and I think this is something that kind of trips people up. YouTube has a feature where it will kind of give you some guidance for content and maybe what's missing, and one of the things that kept coming up in there was card making ideas. So I understand that because I too was once a beginner crafter and I was not confident in my ability to build a layout. And so I just wanted to kind of share with you guys some things that I have learned that would help. So here what I'm doing is I normally cut this part out of my videos because I feel like it's kind of redundant and you just want to see the stamping and the coloring and moving on. But you can see how I kind of play around with the stamps to lay them out to see where I want them to go. And the reason that I was trying to get good placement is because how you compose your card will really help your card look more cohesive, and it will help it look like it goes together. And so because I needed this vine to be a little bit longer, I'm going to flip my card upside down, and then I'm going to stamp this again. It was super easy to line the straight line back up using my MISTI, and then so I'm just going to stamp a couple of extra leaves to make this a little bit longer. This is going to allow me to layer my succulents, which I didn't even color as succulents. Again, another way that you can totally stretch your stamps. I didn't color them as succulents, I colored them as flowers, and I'm perfectly happy with them. I think that they're beautiful. But working in those groups This applies even to gems, the way you apply gems or sequins, or your images to build a focal point. You want to work in odd numbers because your brain, if there's even numbers, when you visually look at something, your brain automatically tries to make pairs. So if you work in odd numbers, it's more pleasing to look at. Another thing that I'm trying to do with my card design is I am trying to keep in mind the rule of thirds. If you don't know what that is, that's no big deal. So basically, if you look at your card or any other design project you would be working on, and you break it up into a grid, which is 9 even squares, all the points where those squares intersect are sweet spots. And it gives your design movement, it gives it a good flow, and it makes it look more composed. So when I am building my cards, I am trying to keep that in mind. Now, typically, I'm more of a bottom right sweet spot person, and you'll see that in multiple of my card designs, I gravitate towards the bottom right, but in this case, I went towards the top left. With those vines coming down, it's going to pull the eye down to that sentiment. So you're leading your viewer's eye around your card and making it more enjoyable to look at. With the Clean and Simple card, I put my Succulents on the line right across my top third and my bottom third. And again, this is going to give me a more pleasing look, a more balanced design. I hope that makes sense. Here, I just wanted to show you with the Copic coloring, I'm going to color right over these distress inks. Years ago, I had somebody, I saw multiple people who were like, don't color over inks, it can clog your tips. This is something that you can do kind of at your own risk, I guess. I'm not calling those people liars. I'm just saying that I've been coloring over distress inks for years, like upwards of 5 years, and I've never had an issue. I've never had it clog my tips. I've never had there be a problem with my markers afterward. So I'm just going to color right over this distress ink. Is this green going to tint my coloring? 100%. Yes, absolutely. But this particular succulent that is stamped down flat is meant to be in the background, so I'm not real concerned about that. If you wanted it to be clean and bright like the other ones, I would suggest masking it or die cutting that one as well, so that you have 3 die cuts that you glue down instead of just my 2. For the coloring, I just picked some colors that I thought would be kind of bright and fun, and then I went with it. I mean, I like color variation, and there's 2 different kinds of styles of greenery in these particular areas. So I chose to go with the bulk majority of it as this yellow-green, and then I did add in some teal. And then for my succulents, which I've turned into flowers, I am going to use pink, purple, and yellow. And all of those just kind of in the same bright colors. I typically work with 4 colors with my Copic coloring. This is probably overkill for an image this small. So you could definitely get away with 3 colors, a light and a medium and a dark. If you are like, nah, 3's too many, that's fine too. Just go with a light and a dark, close enough that they'll blend together. Like I certainly wouldn't go with my RV02 and my RV69, which are my lightest and darkest colors in this particular combination. But I could probably do an RV02 and then add in the RV09 and work that to blend. Because with Copics, they are transparent and your lighter colors will lift your darker colors. So you can make that blend. You would just need to be very careful about bleeding, because the more ink that you put on the paper and the more that it soaks up, the more likely you are to have bleeding outside of your lines, and that can be problematic, especially if you're not super comfortable with your Copics. So yeah, just when you're building your design, like I said, I'm typically a bottom right. Does that mean a lot of my cards have the same composition? Yes, it does. 100%. There's also nothing wrong with creating a center focal point. A center focal point is pretty much a fail-safe. Like, it's never going to look bad if you put it in the center. It just might not have as much movement as you would want. There's a lot of crafters, that are like big name, it sounds so silly. Big name crafters. One of my followers who actually lives local to me, Linda, had reached out to me and asked me if I would be willing to donate a card for a gift basket that she's doing. And she sent me the message and she was like, I really think that people would enjoy having a card from like a local famous card maker. And I'm like, local famous card maker? Like, girl, I put on my pants the same way everybody else does. Ain't nobody around here famous. No child. But it was very sweet of her to say. But anyway, so some of your bigger name card makers probably do use a center focal point, and there's nothing wrong with that. These are just to give you some ideas for how to get a well-composed design that you are happy with. And I've seen a lot of people who, talk about, what is it called now? Because I've been so out of the challenge game for so long. Copy and steal everything. Case. Yep, that's what it is. Wow, took me a minute. Like casing somebody else's card. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're beginning in your card making journey and you're not really sure about how to put a card together and you see someone's card that you really love, as long as you're giving them credit, like this was inspired by such and such, and you're not claiming that intellectual property is your own, there's nothing wrong with copying someone else's card. There isn't, because it's how you're going to learn. It's how you're going to develop your own style. So don't be afraid to do that if you see something that you really love. Like I said, just give credit where credit is due, just like you would want someone to do to you if, they were copying your card. So, as far as story time goes, I do find it interesting. My last video was part of Video Hop, and I didn't share like a personal story. I just shared some of my own personal feelings, and somebody had commented like, oh, I understand why you didn't do story time, because people who don't follow you probably aren't, in the know of your life, which is true. That is why I chose not to do that. So I do have some fears. I'm going to be honest with you. I have looked at, and I think that I'm going to at some point this year. I'm not sure when that will happen just because of, time. But I am going to do online classes. But I am torn. I am very torn because I think that if you're paying to take a class, you want instruction. You don't necessarily want personal life stories. And I totally understand that. I respect that. But then there's a fear that like my regular followers are going to be like, well, I took this Kelly Taylor class and there was no story time. So I'm thinking that maybe a combination, and you can of course let me know your opinion below. You guys know I value your feedback. This is kind of our journey together for art, and I do respect what you have to say. So I'm thinking maybe that I will do the online classes, and then maybe for like extra story time, I will maybe do a Patreon. So just something like, a video a week where it's just like one extra story time. So if you're a person who's into story time, you could do the Patreon route. And if you're a person who's more interested in learning a new technique or getting more specific instruction, you could do the actual classes. So you let me know what you think of that. So the coloring is done, and then I'm going to go in and outline my images. Again, totally optional. If you're going to do it, please do it before you do the die cutting, because otherwise chasing around those little die cuts to outline is a nightmare. But yeah, the dies for this are really fantastic because they're separate. They're super easy to line up, but they will cut out one half of your image, the succulents, or they will cut out the other half, or you can put them together to cut them out for both. And that is what I did. But I love these kinds of dies where you can cut out one or the other because it gives you a lot of versatility with being able to stamp this and then maybe pop up a whole panel where have just one side of it cut out. And it just, I just feel like it makes it more versatile when you can do it that way, where one is flush on your, card still and one portion is cut out. Because they are two different pieces, though they don't connect. And so there's a very thin piece of cardstock that remains in between them. I just went in with my scissors and clipped that off. These stamps are like the line is meant to go all the way across for a A2 size card vertically in portrait. So I knew that like the lines would still go all the way across my design. And for the other one, I was going to trim them off anyway because I'm using them vertically. Speaking of nightmarish things, so ever since Caitlin has had RSV, she didn't really want to eat the same, which was totally understandable. She didn't feel good. So now we've basically gotten back into the groove of her usual routine for eating. But homegirl is still getting up in the middle of the night. Now, I know that I'm spoiled. I will own that. Because my baby has pretty much slept through the night probably since she was like 2.5, 3 months. Like and when I say slept through the night, like she'll sleep until 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'm not having to get up and do 2 a.m. feedings. But ever since she got sick, now we've gotten back in this routine of, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning feedings, which don't get me wrong, I'm grateful, to have the opportunity to get up and with her and take care of her, and she's feeling so much better. But now I got to figure out how we get back on track so that we're sleeping all night, because it's terrible trying to convince her to go back to sleep. I don't love the walking, rocking, bouncing, but I definitely don't love it when I'm half asleep and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You know what I'm saying? So here, building the card, you can see I put 2 of the flowers overlapping each other and one is just a smidge separate. It's not overlapping anything in that top third of the card. And then for this one, I'm going to glue down the top along the top third. But then I am going to stamp my sentiment. This is just to make sure that I have enough room for my sentiment and I'm not trying to squeeze in a sentiment in between my 2 glued images when I don't need to. So here, this sentiment, why couldn't I think of that word? This sentiment is included in the set, but this other one, this To a Lifetime of Love and Happiness, is from the Perfect Day set. And I thought that it would just be a really pretty kind of like if you have a tropical summer wedding, that would be fun for that. And then this one I just chose to do the Hello Friend, honestly, because that was the sentiment that fit best on my card. So I'm going to just stamp them both in black. And again, we have the main focal point in the top third, and then the sentiment in the bottom right third. And for this one, it's a center. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. I've got my focal point in the top and the bottoms, and then the sentiment in the center, and it is a well-balanced design. So she's been getting up, but then she wants to sleep in, which, I mean, that part, I'm not going to lie, has been wonderful because she would usually get up at like 6:30, and now she's sleeping in closer to 8, which is like a more normal time for me to get up. But nonetheless, I am happy that she is on the med and she's getting more, giggly and laughing and, back to her kind of her old self again, which I am so immensely, thank you, Jesus, so immensely grateful for. So we just, this whole week, even though I have taken her to daycare so that I could work some, I'm just kind of letting her do her thing as far as getting up. I want her to get her rest and I don't want to be waking her up unnecessarily. So we've just been kind of trying to wake her maybe like in 10-15 minute increments a little earlier, and then, you know, getting her to bed that way. There, what you saw me doing was taking the Copic markers and just coloring that white outline, because I don't love when you can see it. That's not news to any of you. Here I am using the clear gemstones to accent my sentiment. It was just a little empty, and again, you can see I'm working in those odd numbers. And I did on this card as well. So the wedding card has 5, the other card also has 5, and then I'm just adding some clear shimmer onto what are now flowers instead of succulents, and that's it. That's both cards. So I hope that you learned a little something about card design. I hope that maybe that will help you when you are putting together and composing your own cards. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.